Hello. Hey, it's Christy once again. Um, for the first time all week, I have a spare moment, so I thought I would do a quick series of videos on a subject within the occult that I don't think gets a great deal of attention, but I think it would be interesting to expand upon it. And that is what I call animal necromancy. Now, animal necromancy is working with the shades of deceased animals. There are a lot of advantages to this system over basic human necromancy. Uh, some of the obvious ones. Most necromancy requires the use of body parts. There's no nice way to say that. Um, Grave robbing a corpse, a human, uh, is a lot more taboo in our society than a an animal, right? People care more about digging up Fufu's owner than they do about Fufu. Plus, a lot of people, especially out here in the country where I live, you had a dog, you bury it in the backyard. That's a grave, and it's a grave that you can turn into a necromantic ritual space fairly easily. It's not like you have to sneak into some graveyards, which in a lot of parts of the country are heavily guarded, uh, for this sort of death magic working. So I think that animal necromancy is just easier in a lot of ways. Perhaps it's a good place to start working with death. Um, I know I have several animals buried in my backyard, and we in a little dedicated area that we put up stones and stuff. So it's a natural sort of graveyard. Um, and I have found that necromancy that's done by this method is just as effective as necromancy done other places. I think one of the main places that necromancy of animals is useful is if you're interested in Therian sorcery. Um, so when you're going to try to shapeshift using possession by an animal spirit, animal necromancy gives you a source of those animals to work on. Um, so, just a couple of principles. There's what we might call basic necromancy and advanced necromancy. This is all of it that I'm saying is true in human necromancy also. So, basic necromancy is the evocation of shades or remnants, uh, commonly referred to as ghosts, but that's kind of a loaded word. It's an imprecise phrase, and I don't really like using it. But evocation of the remnant, the shade, is no different than the evocation of any other spirit. But the dead don't have sigils, so you have to use personal connectors. I have when I want to raise my deceased dog, first I have those memories, um, and I also have a collar and a scrapbook that I made. Her collar and a scrapbook that I made when she died, and both of these are excellent sources of connection to my dead dog. So evoking her is no problem. Generally, the dead should be evoked in the West, which is the historic land of the dead according to Egyptian mythology. Um, Evoking in yeah, so set your manifesting triangle in the west. Black candles, violet candles are good necromancy colors. And the best incense to burn is resin of myrrh. That seems to have an effect. And there are lots of manifesting elixirs. I'm going to talk to you about some of those in the second part. So, advanced necromancy, some other techniques. Manipulating death essences is a big one. Controlling spirits, conjuring lots of them, that sort of thing. And I'm going to get into that in the next part, but more distinctions. So, one distinction is direct versus spirit-mediated necromancy. And in direct necromancy, you're making a direct connection to the dead, right? You're bonding with the dead, and in that sense, you're also bonding with the death essence. Now, the death essence is one of the most potent and dangerous forces in the occult world. It usually manifests to people as like a mist of gray color or black color, and when they see it with their eyes, and it has a very powerful, like if you touch an object, full of it. And it has lots of uses. One is to charge necromantic objects to make them channels, but you can also use it as a curse, right? To direct death essence at someone, and they will very quickly be cursed. So, but bonding with that yourself, that can be dangerous. I know one necromancer, Dante Abiel, talked about in promotion of his book how his back gave out due to working with this. So a safer method is spirit-mediated necromancy. This is where you call on a spirit that is not a dead spirit, usually a demon, and you form a bond with that demon, and then that demon goes, and that demon goes out, and that demon bonds in and with the thing to be called. Murmur is a good example. Crosias from Book of Azazel is probably the best one I know from my experience with doing this. The only problem with this, though, that I've experienced is that for me, as a channeler, I have a very difficult time just hearing the voice of the dead person when I've focused all my energy on connecting with the demon. So, those are the basic principles and distinctions. I suppose we could talk about some very basic rituals before I wrap up this video. One is parting the veils, where you basically imagine the veil of death standing before you, and it sort of looks like a shimmering sheen, sometimes actually cloth. I'm sorry, I'm kind of tired. And then you make a symbolic ripping of the veil in order to allow death to come into you. I usually do this right with a consecrated sickle. And then once the veil's open, you can evoke the death essence directly to come through that open veil and swirl around you and be put into objects. The last thing I want to talk about before I wrap up this quick video is initiation. Initiation into any necromantic current can be done through Well, there are several methods of initiation. Probably the quickest one is an evocation of Okat, who is the demonic gatekeeper of the cemetery. And this method is advocated in S. Connolly's entire grimoire, which is dedicated to Okat, the Keys of Okat, which is a primer on demonolatrous necromancy. So in part 2 of this video series, I'm going to talk about specific rituals of more advanced sorts of necromancy that relate to animals. So, see you in part 2.